everybody, Roger and James here from the DisKingdom Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Disney comic books and why doesn't Marvel release Disney comics? Because IDW have been doing Disney comics for a long time. Now Dark Horse Comics are getting in on the Disney. Actually, seem to be getting a lot of the newer stuff. They're going to be, just read the Incredibles 2 comic book literally last night. They're doing bits and pieces. Marvel have released some stuff. They did, recently, they did the Enchanted Tiki Room, the Big Thunder Mountain, and the Haunted Mansion comics. But Marvel seems to be staying way away from anything like Mickey Mouse or Disney related, even though they do Star Wars. So I just thought we'd just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and there haven't been any public statements made by Marvel or executives or IDW or Dark Horse, any of these companies, as to why that is. So it's pretty much all speculation on the why. And I would assume it's mostly for branding reasons. That might not make sense on the surface because obviously they own Marvel, so you would want them to brand it that way. But I think that, a lot of the ones that we're seeing from IDW, Boom, Dark Horse are, adaptations of their animated movies to television shows like DuckTales and Darkwing Duck, stuff like that. And I think they want there to be a very clear divide between these are the stories meant for the older audiences, which will be the superhero comics and the Star Wars books, and these are the comics meant for the kids. DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, Frozen, Tangled, Incredibles 2, that kind of thing. So
yeah, it's a bit of an odd one because in general you'd think, well, why are you paying another company to do a product for you when you have the biggest company
more likely those companies are paying them for the right to do it, but
it's a kind of weird thing of well, you own Marvel and you make you are one of the top two. I know Dark Horse and Image and Boom and but if you ask the majority of people, they would say Marvel and DC. But it just seems a bit odd. I mean, I can see from IDW when they released the classic ones, and they often retold from European comic books and redone into English, and there's a little bit. But why Marvel doesn't just have a subsection Disney comics? Nothing mentioned with Marvel. They've got the infrastructure for sending them out. They've got the infrastructure for making them. Why outsource it? I mean, Disney do a lot of outsourcing anyway. It just feels a little bit like, well, why are you... Especially, it really confused me with Dark Horse. That was the one of why Dark Horse are getting so many of the new stuff. And even IDW have kind of lost... Maybe they're not doing as well as Dark Horse, but that seemed a bit odd.
So this is going to be purely speculation, but my suspicion for it is, first and foremost, regardless of IDW or Dark Horse, is that it gives Disney a buffer in terms of financial risk. So, like I said, these companies are probably paying Disney for the right to do this. That's generally how the licensed comics work. And so because of that, Disney can say, regardless of what your sales are, we expect X amount of dollars every month for the continued use of the DuckTales license or whatever. So they will get that money no matter what. So even if the DuckTales comic completely tanks, which I don't think it has, I think it's had decently solid numbers for that type of comic, Disney can at least say, we're making our money. So they're not taking any of the risk with these titles, which... Traditionally, kids' comics don't sell as well these days. No. All ages titles don't sell as well these days, which makes sense. The majority of the market are people in our age bracket, not younger. So there's that. And now why it would switch from IDW to Dark Horse, I strongly suspect, again, it has to do with Dark Horse gave them better terms or agreed to better terms from Disney. That's probably all that there is to it. There's no, favoritism or whatever. It's just straight up.
Oh, yeah, it'd be a straight up business decision. I think the thing that gets me is that concept of why you would outsource something when you are the biggest company already. I can understand the thing of Marvel fans don't want the Disney stuff anywhere near them, and maybe by going through Dark Horse and stuff, they can. If Dark Horse make an announcement or release a solicitors and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't get lost in the Marvel thing. It just seems a bit odd with the Star Wars thing. Now, I want to slightly touch on this with the 21st Century Fox stuff that's going to be coming in. Ultimately the purchase looks like it's going to be going through. Fox own a large proportion of Boom Comics, which is another big chain, and they've got franchises out like Dark Horse do the Aliens and I think the Predator, and they also do Little Trouble in Big China, but IDW do like X-Files and things like that. So they've got things going off in all bits and pieces. I'm still surprised that's not all come under Boom, which they own. It's all going to get very confusing from the point of what's going to be happening in the long run, but it almost feels like Marvel need to kind of set up a subsection to deal with all their non-Marvel brands.
They probably need to, but again, I don't think they're going to. No. Because a lot of these brands, including Aliens and Predators and all that stuff, don't make the sales numbers that something like Star Wars does, or Avengers or Spider-Man. So they want to keep that wall of risk. So IDW takes the risk, they make the profits, and that's ideal. And we can compare this back to the video game market. We've obviously seen a lot of how they did that, and they go back and forth between no, we want everything in-house, no, we want everything to be done by EA. We've seen how well that's worked out on both sides of the equation. So I think the current atmosphere at Disney, not just for comics, but just in general, is we own the properties, we have the parks, we make the movies. You guys go out and make the content. You pay us, what the contract rate is, no matter how well your product sells, and that's their current business, to shield themselves as much as possible from risk.
See, this is where I think it slides into the thing of like Disney Comics is viewed as a merchandise item, whereas a Marvel comic is viewed as an original source kind of content. And I almost feel like they're looking. Merchandise gets everything. Merchandise is being outsourced, and that seems to be the line that Disney have done.
Well, there's actually something in that as well. It's not that Marvel is necessarily a merchandise or even like a content. It's that it's a content farm.
Yeah.
A lot of comics, and not just Marvel, not just DC. This is actually true for Image, IDW, all of them. A lot of their original comics really aren't about the comics anymore. They're about making pitches to Hollywood or to television to turn them into shows. And you see this a lot. A lot of Image comics are being pitched as television shows these days. Marvel, of course, use comics as a way to test the waters for what they think will work in the movies, in the television shows. That's why Squirrel Girl is going to be leading the New Warriors in that upcoming show. Why the Runaways ended up in their own show, and so on. And part of it then is because the Disney comics, DuckTales, Tangled, and so on, they're not content farms. No. They're building on pre-existing content. So there's Marvel, which is a farm, and these properties over here, which are merchandise. Yeah. So I think that's also part of the divide.
It's just, like I said, it was just something like it's like that weird thing of like now, of when I do the weekly check through to see what comics are out, it's that thing of like I'm now checking 3 or 4 companies to see. Whereas with Marvel, it's very easy. I mean, IDW do a few like archive stuff, but generally, it's like I think it's that odd thing as well where Star Wars comes in. I just feel maybe once. Because obviously Star Wars are not in the Marvel universe, and so therefore I can understand why they don't want everything in the Marvel universe has got the big Marvel logo on it. So therefore, but I don't know. I do wonder if there's going to be a shift coming up with this when they've kind of got so much to reshuffle. But also, comic books are not making the money they used to, and there's a lot of them and there's a whole issue of comic books needing a major reshuffle regardless, because it's not as profitable as they used to be, and they're not selling as well. And
not as profitable as they used to be. They haven't been profitable since the 90s, early 90s. So it's been due for a reshuffle for a long time.
It probably is that thing. And I do wonder if it's just, and they've recently signed this deal with Dark Horse, and going off my first initial impression of what I've read so far, they've been doing bits and pieces. the quality is probably slightly better, but also it might be that thing as well of, I don't know, it just feels very odd to have all these different companies taking a piece of the pie when you have got the biggest one on the planet making, and you've got all the distribution networks, you've got the printing presses, you've got the digital distribution data, because even that's the other thing of it, like IDW didn't do digital copies properly, the same way that Dark Horse and things like that, even just going on to Amazon and buying like Incredibles is there, whereas the IDW stuff isn't. And things like that all equate into having a company which can get this content out the easiest when Marvel is already there.
Yeah, and we'll have to see where they go from here. But I suspect they're going to continue to outsource the Disney properties and the animated properties at least for a couple more years.
Yeah, but we'd love to know what you guys think. Do you read the Disney comic books and stuff like that? Love to know your thoughts on that. Go check us out over at DisKingdom.com. We do try and cover comic book stuff. I don't go full into. It's like sometimes, quite often, I get sent an image by Marvel, and it's literally just a cover and a title, and it's like, well, I need a little bit more information than this. If I have to do research, it's like that thing of like, so there's that kind of thing. I try and do some more reviews and stuff, so we'll get that on. And obviously, that's the main thing for you over at heroiclegacy.com.
Exactly.
What you do over there.
Yeah, it is. In fact, we got some reviews up this week, but we'll be talking more about comics in another.
Yes, we're gonna.
Yeah,
we got two comic books. It's almost like there's a lot of stuff just ahead of San Diego Comic Con. Anyway, guys, go check us out over at DisKingdom.com and heroiclegacy.com, and we shall see you guys soon. Later.